Warning, this podcast contains mature themes and coarse language. The hosts frequently employ humor to offset the serious and occasionally upsetting material. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back to The Dark Side. I'm Brianna.
I'm Dyson.
And this is episode 83 of Dark Adaptation. How's it going? You happy to be here?
Happy to be here.
Are you full?
Very full.
Me too. I wish we stuck to our Blade Runner rule of not eating till the hard part of the day's done. And we had to eat the heaviest food.
It was delicious.
I'm just so full of sleepy. I'm ready to just watch a movie.
Shut up.
Are you ready to hear today's case?
No, I'm ready to watch a movie.
What do you want to watch? What should we watch?
I don't know. We'll have to pick something.
Okay, you have like an hour and a half to think about it.
Okay. All right.
Try not to barf in your mouth because I heard that. Ew, I can smell it. Oh, did you eat a Red Lobster cheddar biscuit?
Oh, I ate several.
Okay, so today's case is, well, we'll be talking about a missing girl who turns up dead.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to sensationalist media and some early Satanic Panic, we're also talking about some occult and Satanist elements, which is pretty atypical for me. I usually do not care to talk about cults, or the Satanic Panic, really. Like, I find those topics very interesting, but for me to, like, dive in, I'm usually like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, and that's always been, like, a hard, fast rule with you, pretty much. Not a rule, but, I mean, you've never... Every time we listen to something that's talking about a cult or something like that, you're always just like, I just can't get into it. It's
because I have a hard time, like, just getting with it. I'm like, what happened to all these people that they fall for all this?
Yeah.
What happened to them?
Like,
they
how the
must
fuck
have been so sad and lost.
Like, imagine giving a fuck about Jared Leto.
Oh my god. Remember, speaking of Blade Runner, and you were like, oh my god, is that David Leto? And I was like, yeah, it's a David Leto. Because you fucking can never get the names or quotes of nothing right.
Yeah, at least when you said it back to me, I was like, wait, I said David?
David Leto.
I caught myself.
Oh my god, David, I love your work.
I would do that to him if I met him, just to fuck with his head, because he does it to everyone he meets. You see him every time, and he always does that, like, weird kind of power move.
Ew.
Yeah, I don't like him.
I don't care about him.
I don't care.
I just don't think about him. I don't care about David Leto. So yeah, it's really atypical of me to do cults. This isn't so much a cult, it's more of like the Satanic Panic. Like, and the Satanic Panic prelude, it was not the height of it, but yeah. Not super into doing these kind of cases usually, because they typically end up being like totally misguided beliefs with the whole like shock and fear of the panic, and then a lot of the time it happens to be like irrelevant crap, which we learn is exactly what happened in this case.
Oh, good.
So all of the hullabaloo, is that a word?
Yep.
I wrote it and it didn't autocorrect.
It didn't?
No, it said hullabaloo. Like, it did not give me a red squiggle or nothing. And I was like, wow, first time typing that out, and it says it's a real word.
It's a real word. Yeah.
Hullabaloo.
I wouldn't even know where to start with that word.
All the hullabaloo starts in 1972. Oh my god, that rhymed. In Springfield, Stop yawning. In Springfield, New Jersey, at the Baltusrol Gardens apartment complex on Wilson Road, after a dog returns home from roaming the nearby Hudai Rock Quarry. And it is very nearby. It's 0.6 miles. It's like literally next door. The dog brings with him a decomposing forearm and hand. The woman's body this arm and hand belongs to is eventually found on September 19th, 1972, atop the Devil's Teeth, which is an isolated 40-foot cliff top within the Hudai Quarry.
Sick name.
Right?
Yeah.
The cliff where she was discovered was said to be covered with occult symbols, a makeshift coffin, satanic relics, and people claimed her body was placed on a makeshift altar. Rumors immediately started spreading among the police and locals that the death was at the hands of local witches or Satanists who used the girl as a human sacrifice. The body was badly decomposed, so a cause of death was never officially determined or at least released. The identity of the girl was determined, however, and she was 16-year-old Jeannette DePalma, and she had been missing for 6 weeks.
Sorry, did you say rumors were spreading among police and public?
Yeah.
The police were doing this too?
Yeah, so
oh no.
I'll paint a clearer picture of that as we go on, but they just about the town, if you happen to catch one of the officers who was familiar with the case, they were not helping at all with the rumors. They were maybe starting to believe them, or were embellishing details, or they were so misguided with how to do the investigation that they decided they could maybe just hop on the rumor mill. It's really unclear.
Oh no.
But
that's not good.
No, it's really, really messy.
Yeah.
So on the afternoon of Monday, August 7th, 1972, Jeannette DePalma left her home on Clearview Road in Springfield, New Jersey, telling her mother that she was going to take a train to a friend's house. And for reference, her home is about 3 miles from the quarry, so it's all relatively in the same area. It's really close together. When she didn't arrive at her friend's house or return home later that evening, her parents filed a missing person report with the Springfield Police Department on August 8th, so the following day. As we know, Jeannette had been lying deceased in Hudai Quarry. She wasn't found until 6 weeks later, but due to the state of decomposition, it's likely she'd been killed the same day she went missing. So on the evening of August 7th, or potentially the early morning of August 8th, but definitely around that time. Again, due to the state of decomposition, a cause of death couldn't conclusively be determined. Investigators didn't find any items in the vicinity to suggest she had taken her own life. Her clothing and body didn't have any knife marks or stab wounds to indicate she was stabbed to death. And she didn't have any broken bones or substantial injuries to suggest she either fell to her death or was injured in some way that resulted in her death.
Mm-hmm.
Since the coroner couldn't rule out the possibility she died of strangulation or asphyxiation, that seems to be the cause of death the police were working with. Early on in the investigation, police received a tip about a potential suspect, a homeless man the locals knew as Red. He had an encampment nearby, and around the time Jeannette went missing and likely died, he apparently up and left the area entirely, which people thought was really strange, so they pointed police in his direction, yo, this guy Red, he literally lives here. He has a whole tent set up. Conveniently, he is now gone, and this body's turned up. You gotta check out Red, man. So they did. Red became the prime suspect for a hot minute.
Yeah.
But then the police quickly ruled out that he was a suspect. They dismissed him, and they were like, no, this guy has no connection to Jeanette's death. Another theory the police were working with was that Jeannette had potentially died of an accidental overdose. And then the asphyxiation comes into play because it could have occurred while she was choking on her vomit or had a restricted airway. Police told the public multiple times that the spot where her body was found was a party spot for local teens to drink and do drugs, and maybe Jeannette overdosed while partying with several other teenagers. And instead of getting the help for Jeannette and calling an ambulance, the other teens fled because they feared, prosecution or repercussions of some sort.
I've seen this one. It's a classic. And it's always the police going accidental overdose or something when it's not.
This was a local party spot for the youth of the day.
But also whatever they talk about, the way they talk about this, these kids are fleeing like a flock of seagulls,
I know.
Fluttering away. Okay, so that was a long story short. I don't believe that one.
Okay, I was like, is that train of thought going somewhere, or you just wanted share your visual.
I just think it's always funny. Like back then, they would always be like, "Oh, it was an accidental overdose." Or
Yeah,
something.
I know. It's like a conspiracy to cover it up, and all the teens know.
Because it's easier for their close rates if they say that.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have like an extra unsolved murder on their record.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. When considering this as a theory that, she accidentally overdosed and everyone just ran away instead, it's important to note that no drugs or paraphernalia were found at the scene to suggest an overdose. Plus, her friends and family said that she didn't use any recreational or prescription drugs. She just occasionally smoked pot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the 70s, and I think every teenager was smoking pot.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were hesitant to subscribe to the theory that she died of a drug overdose. I don't know if any drugs were found in her system or if toxicology tests were even done.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find that in my research, but that would also be helpful to know. Because if there was a toxicology report that was like, no drugs in the system, then you would know.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume since it's a theory they were working with, there either was or they didn't even do tests.
Yeah.
But again, who knows? And you can't really trust what the police are saying or doing in this case.
Mm-hmm.
We can see that at first, at least, the police were investigating different avenues as to how Jeannette died and who or what was responsible. Because they weren't positive, police were never officially disclosing to the public her cause of death and that it was strangulation, even though that's kind of what they were working with. But they eventually were very clear that they believed she was murdered.
Okay.
Specifically, in a sacrificial manner, at the hands of a, quote, coven of witchcraft assembly thought to exist in the area.
Man, those murdering coven witches, man, they're just not very nice in the 70s. They were
Clearly not, especially
everywhere.
Everywhere. Especially because they're like in a sacrificial manner. Oh, okay.
It always
okay,
gets me
Mr. Intense.
like, where did these like details come from?
That's a great question.
Like,
because for real,
sacrifice.
yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, like we, like they're like drug overdose. And they're like, they're like, never mind, sacrifice to the witches.
Yeah, like we'll get in and see that there's like a couple things maybe that could like point them in this direction, but it's like all very much stretches and fear mongering.
Maybe they just really wanted to say in a press release or something, like it was a conspiracy coven of wicked witches who did this girl in.
It's true. Like, we've never been able to print those words. Should we start now? Pretty cool for us.
I think this will play out well.
Ten days after Jeannette's body was discovered, September 29th, 1972, an article in the Daily Journal claimed, quote, investigation into the death of 16-year-old Jeannette DePalma is focusing on elements of black witchcraft and Satan worship. A review of death scene photos, according to reports, is leading authorities to believe the girl's death may have been in the nature of a sacrifice. Pieces of wood, at first thought to be at the scene by chance, are now seen as symbols. One searcher said 2 pieces of wood were crossed on the ground over her head. More wood framed the body, like a coffin. Unquote.
I hate people.
Especially when you, in that article, say, at first thought to be a scene of chance. A scene by chance. Oh my Jesus Christ, I had a stroke when I said that. At first thought to be at the scene by chance. They're now seen as symbols.
Wood.
Fucking wood.
And the thing too is, like, has no one ever been like, no one just spoke up and was like, hey, people see patterns if they want to.
Yeah, exactly.
That's literally like the crux of a forensic investigation, is to know when it's real or you're just seeing a pattern that you should ignore.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally the division, and anyone who sees CSI knows that you got to follow where the evidence takes you, and you can't let your assumptions.
Yeah, the pieces
move your
are
way.
supposed to naturally fit. You can't do a Homer Simpson and try to cram it in
Yeah, exactly.
when he's doing that jigsaw puzzle. Everything could work as a Simpsons reference.
It truly can.
So these details were supposedly the police's main reason for switching gears from Jeanette being strangled by some sort of psychopath or accidentally overdosing, to now believing witchcraft and Satan worshipping were involved in Jeanette's death. So police also thought her murder could be connected to at least 2, quote, sacrifices involving dead animals in the surrounding area of Watchung Reservation, which is right next to Hudai Quarry, and then in nearby Westfield, which is only 2 to 3 miles south of Springfield. Union County Park Police had recently discovered burning candles, a bowl of blood and feathers, and pigeons with their necks snapped in one sacrifice. And then in a separate incident, a dead goat was found that appeared to be a rite. A rite like an R-I-T-E.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So a religious ceremony, I guess.
Yeah, a religious sacrifice.
So word began spreading about the alleged occult relics left by witches practicing black magic at the crime scene. Word turned into rumors that started swirling all over town and eventually across the country. But one rumor in particular haunted and scared the shit out of Jeanette's parents. People were talking about how police had apparently brought a witch out to the crime scene to inspect the area where Jeanette's body had been found. And her parents were, quote, afraid the witch would try to bring Jeanette back from the dead.
That's sad.
Right?
Yeah.
So this was a nightmarish thought to her parents because, well, I mean, probably for a number of reasons, but mainly because they were deeply religious.
Mm-hmm.
They regularly attended services at the Assemblies of God Evangel Church. So the idea of basically raising somebody from the dead, let alone that somebody being their own daughter, that was like horrible. That's evil. That's devil's work. That'd
be like an affront against God to them.
Yeah, it's like an abomination. Like, they already are lost in translation, basically, trying to figure out what happened to their daughter.
Mm-hmm.
They're already probably devastated because she'd been missing 6 weeks before she was even found.
Yep.
And then the police are like, well, we did investigate that guy who apparently fled the area. We did look into the accidental overdose. It's witches and Satanists now. Her parents are on like this absolute whirlwind.
Mm-hmm.
And to make it worse, they never, like nobody, the family, the public, nobody ever heard any more about this witch that was supposedly helping with the police's crime scene investigation. And when anybody was asking police, the police refused to comment on the rumor.
Oh my God.
So
because they couldn't rule out black magic.
And they wouldn't even say like, yes, we did bring in like a witch or some expert or whoever. They literally just don't talk. They don't talk about anything.
Oh my God.
So yeah, the poor parents who just want any sort of answers about what happened to their child, their 16-year-old daughter, they have to battle crazy wild tales and speculations. They're reading this shit in the paper and they're like, what the fuck is going on with, they probably didn't swear at all. They're probably like, good golly, Molly. I don't know.
Miss Molly.
Yeah, whatever. I swear too much. I don't need to use phrases like Miss Molly. Some people, mainly other Christians, started to believe that Jeanette might have accidentally provoked a group of teen Satanists at her high school. Jeanette was a Christian who, quote, tried to lead others to Jesus. So my understanding is that she was involved with a group that was through the church that helped people who were addicted to drugs try to find Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, basically like leading them to faith.
Mm-hmm.
People suspect she tried to evangelize the Satan-worshipping teens, and they retaliated. Specifically, Reverend James L. Tate, the reverend who ran the group Jeanette was a part of, and who was the reverend at the church her parents went to, theorized that Satanists selected Jeanette as a human sacrifice because of that was their way of retaliating.
It's so fucking weird because I can't think of a group that wants absolutely zero contact with this girl than a group of Satanists.
Yeah, plus Satanists
in high school
are not violent.
They're not even like religious.
No.
That's the funny thing. Like they're really just doing it to prove a point. So
yeah, there's a complete difference to being spiritual and being religious.
Yeah.
And the Satanists, they're not praising God.
No.
Satanic Panic has always sort of been around. It reached the height of moral panic in the mid-'80s, But in the 70s, the idea of worshiping things other than God or Jesus, mainly Satan, was being talked about more and more because the youth were disillusioned and they were misguided and blah, blah, blah. It's basically everything that the older people were going to say about the kids of that time, being like fucking hippies, because it was a different generation before them.
Yeah.
Hardened by a lot of very intense things like war and depressions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So when society is seemingly facing a moral panic like this, like watching teens smoke pot and be more liberal, it becomes an opportune time for Christians, for example, and other organized religious sects to push their beliefs on people in society in hopes that straying individuals and lost people, whatever, reevaluate their life and their moral compass. So the Reverend, who knew and worked with Jeannette, could have pushed this theory forward that Satan worshipping teens retaliated because he wanted people to be afraid of evil Satanists, which in turn meant more people in the church, more butt in his pews, all of that. That is my speculation. I'm not saying the Reverend did that on purpose. Like, he might actually have just been genuinely worried and meant well because he knew Jeannette and the family. But the point I'm making is that it was very common for other reverends and church leaders to seize fearful and troubled moments.
Yeah, regardless of how you look at it, he gains the benefit.
Yes. People from all over the country were essentially capitalizing on the public sphere of Satanists and witch covens, even printing ads within articles about Jeannette's murder on how to be saved by the Holy Ghost.
Oh my God.
Like, you'd be reading this devastating article about a 16-year-old girl who was found dead and no one knows what the fuck happened, and apparently there's occult activity, and then in the bottom right hand corner they'll be like Joe Blow and Miss Molly's face, like, come and be saved by the Holy Ghost. And it was, the ad that I saw was from California and we're in New Jersey, so they could literally grab the nation's attention, and you have people who are like preying on the fear.
Yep.
And like, that wasn't new then. That's not new now. That still happens today. Just yesterday, actually, I checked my mail and there was, you know how like sometimes you get those random handwritten letters from the Kingdom Hall?
Yep.
And they're like, come and find Jehovah. It was like really intense. It was like this creepy handwritten note. It said to the family of, and then my address.
Yep.
And it was talking about like how we're in unprecedented times and everybody is in fear and everyone's living in fear, but I don't have to live in fear because I have Jehovah and I can come and find him at the Kingdom Hall.
Yeah.
And like, it's so creepy to me. I hate them, those letters.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so wrong to be like essentially campaigning.
Yeah. For
people to come to your church. Like, to me, a church is lovely. It is what it is. It could be spiritual, but like, people should seek the church. You shouldn't have to go out campaigning for people to come and be a part of it.
Yeah.
Because half the time those people are going to be vulnerable or in a state where they could be
manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's why I don't like those letters either. I mean, even when they start off framing things as like we're in unprecedented times and scare you over it, it's marketing. Like, it's literally like they grab your attention. They try and create interest in the church based on like a problem that they've created in that letter.
Yeah.
And then giving you this solution that's going to make everything go away. And it's not real.
Mm-mm.
But I mean, if you're in the wrong track of mind and you read that, you're just going to follow through with all of it.
I know.
You're just going to believe it.
I was like even thinking about it and I'm like, this past year in my life has been really hard for me, like emotionally and mentally. And if I was a more susceptible person and wasn't as grounded as I am, despite how like depressed I get or whatever, like I would be a prime like target for manipulation that way. And it happens to so many people. And I just think it's so sad. That's why I have a hard time listening to stories about cults and hearing about these people that are in them. Because I'm like, oh, if only the right person spoke to you and like helped you find a community that was actually healthy.
Yeah. And there's like so many of them too. It's just like, Jesus Christ, they fell into the one.
I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, this whole, when it comes to all of that, trying to get people to come find the Holy Ghost and seek Jehovah, I'm just like, oh my God, please. I will come to you. Please stop writing me anonymous letters.
They're like, you will?
Well, shit. Well, dust my britches. Wait, what did I say the other day?
Oh, fuck.
I'll flick my bean from the back.
Yeah, that's it.
People listening are like, okay, but like you need God.
You actually should seek Jesus.
Did you throw the letter about Jehovah away?
Yeah, you know what? I don't want you to seek Jesus because I don't want to put up with you if you become a Jesus freak.
I would be insufferable.
Yeah.
So anyway, rumors continued to spread, eventually escalating when people began saying the devil's teeth. Sorry. The devil's teeth cliff that Jeannette's body was found on must mean her death was connected to occult activity, just simply because it's called devil's teeth.
Mm-hmm. Very sound logic.
I think so. I'm sold now, actually. I think we should maybe scrap this episode.
Yeah, they were right.
Shit.
Fuck. Never considered them being right.
People were even talking about how her body was found lying on a pentagram surrounded by mutilated animal remains. The description of the crime scene just kind of kept getting more and more graphic as the days passed, and people gossiped about it, and then the newspapers ran story after story with gradually more shocking details. It was sensationalized like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But the police were not commenting on the investigation or on what people were reading in the paper. So, of course, the public wasn't being eased in the slightest, and the fear was growing because police seemingly had nothing. They didn't appear to have any clues. No suspects. Definitely no Satanists or witches in custody. So, police attempted to continue investigating, but there really wasn't any evidence. There wasn't any viable tips coming in from the public. And the stories given by Jeannette's family, friends, and peers, because of course they're interviewing them, like, can you tell us more about Jeannette, about her movements, about what she would have been doing, blah, blah, blah. Those are becoming more convoluted and inconsistent because it's now getting all mashed up with the horrifying shit that they're hearing about around town and reading in the paper.
Mm-hmm.
So the case just goes cold because little progress is being made and you can't really go anywhere after all this occult Satanist witch stuff.
Yeah, like they were like a hair short of like raiding a broom store.
Probably. Probably.
Wow.
And it's just really sad because it's not the family's fault. It's not the friend's fault. It's not peers' fault, public's fault. Nobody's fault, really. Of course, you could say, maybe you shouldn't take everything so literal that you're reading in the paper about all of this. But like that just was not in their mind. That wasn't a thing.
I mean, I fully blame the reporters.
Oh, well, yeah.
And I wholly blame the police for not commenting on shit like that.
Yeah, they're so vague about the case, let alone about all the rumors of Satanist shit. They're not even acknowledging that.
Yeah, it's like they took it too seriously. You know how they always say, like, you know, we're not going to talk to the press and give away like a bunch of information about what we know. We'll give you the basics. The key there is like you still give them the basics.
Yeah, no one was
like there's no coven involved. It's so basic, and you could do that, but
that's what I mean. And I said earlier, it's like I don't know if they believed it, if they were starting to subscribe to it themselves, if they're the ones that started the rumors. Like you don't know.
It just irritates me because I mean those are actions that just show that they didn't care about the community, because the community's freaking out over this.
Yes, they were,
and they're going about their business without dispelling what is like obviously absolute nonsense.
Yeah. So like even when they're asked questions about the witch helping the investigation, they would not answer.
Mm-hmm.
When asked if they could release photos of the crime scene or share more details about the crime and the crime scene to hopefully aid in their investigation, like, well, maybe if you give a certain detail, it could bring forth someone who knows more about it.
Mm-hmm.
The police would say that they couldn't. They would say the files were confidential. Sometimes they would straight up say all of the photos of the crime scene are lost. Like whatever excuse they would say as to not helping to push this in a new direction or further at all.
Oh, God.
Police were also partially responsible for the rumor mill that surrounded Jeannette's death. They were not dispelling any myths. They weren't dispelling any falsehoods. And in a lot of cases, it appears they were perpetuating the rumors. So because of this, the long-standing theory was that Jeannette was murdered by a coven of satanic witches that practiced some sort of dark or black magic and used Jeannette as a human sacrifice.
My favorite part, like, I don't like any of this, but my favorite detail of this is that they feel the need to clarify dark or black magic.
Dark or black magic.
But, like, not general magic. Don't get me wrong, guys. The general magic's okay.
Yep.
It's the dark black magic that I'm not here for.
They need it to sound metal as fuck, so it's scary.
Yeah, but it just made it sound cool. Like, dark magic sounds cool. Like, just anyway.
And not in 1972. It sounded scary.
Yeah, it's true.
So this was the theory for so long because of the animal sacrifices found around Union County leading up to her death, and then, of course, because it was said that occult-like objects were found at the crime scene. Well, this is probably the most shocking piece of information you will ever hear. It turns out the description of the crime scene was bullshit.
What?
Creating a whole new controversy and likely explaining why police repeatedly claimed the photos were lost.
I've got it. The police are the coven.
Dun, dun, dun.
It was wizards all along.
Dark magic wizards?
Dark magic wizards. We're in on this.
Dark magic wizards. Oh, look, must be the last wizard of the season.
Them can't hear the Yotha.
I've never seen your mouth move in that way. That was wild.
It felt weird the whole time I did it.
Do you like horror movies?
Do you like hanging out with your friends?
Do you like having a laugh?
Do you like podcasts?
Well, you should check out our podcast, Spoils of Horror.
We're not a review show.
We're a horror movie hangout where we talk about movies that are lost, forgotten, popular, and bizarre, all in the scary realm.
You can listen to our podcast while you're doing just about anything.
You could be washing your dishes.
You could be washing your cat.
You could be washing your genitals. All forms of genitals accepted.
We are a fully inclusive genitalia show.
Yes, we are the #1 ideal podcast for washing your genitals.
Our genital Yelp reviews are unsurpassed.
5.5 stars.
You don't want to know where that half came from. It's,
Now that you know that, check us out on all major platforms.
you can search for Spoils of Horror on all social media sites
Come and hang out with us. We'd love to see you.
and your genitals.
Bye.
Beginning in 1997, so that's 25 years after Jeannette's death, Weird New Jersey magazine began publishing stories about Jeannette's unsolved case after receiving fan mail that basically reignited interest in her story.
Okay, so I feel like I would just 100% be subscribed to Weird New Jersey magazine.
Definitely.
But, like, not live in New Jersey. Like, I'd still live here. I'm just a subscriber of Weird New Jersey magazine.
That would happen. You'd be like, oh, I found it on Reddit and really like it. Now I'm part of the Weird New Jersey fan club. Wait, what do you think their like fan club would be called? You know how like if we're talking about Patreon, then I'll call it like the dark loves or dark side and stuff like that. Weird New Jersey.
Devil Doters.
What the heck? That's good.
Yeah, I know.
Are
You're
you
welcome.
subscribed, you little fucker? That was way too specific.
New Jersey Devil Doters. I love it. You're welcome.
New Jersey Devil. Like,
It's good.
the fucking... Anyway, we got the joke. You don't have to say less, Brianna. So the first letter that came in, like I said, that basically reignited interest in her story, was, quote, "There was an alleged ritual sacrifice, I think, in the Hudai Quarry near Springfield. A local dog brought a body part home to its master, which led to an investigation. I don't know if it's true or just a local myth." I don't know how to do a New Jersey accent.
I'm
okay?
unsubscribing.
I never ever watched one episode of Jersey Shore, so I can't do it. I know what GTL is, and that's the extent. I know that Michelle Visage is from New Jersey. I know that it's beside New York State. That's the extent of it. I don't know. I can't do an accent.
I know. Yeah, and you've heard me try to do accents around
All
that
of
region.
your accents are like
Forget about it. That's all I've not seen one episode of The Sopranos in my life.
That's crazy to me. I love The Sopranos. It's so good.
Yeah, I don't know. The Sopranos and The Wire are two that I've been told like I really should fucking watch. And you know what? No.
No, you don't have to, because people always say that, and then you feel weird if you don't like it.
Yeah.
Like Game of Thrones, like, sorry, I'm not into it. I've tried to watch it, I don't give a shit. But
Yeah.
then you feel like a weirdo because people are like, that's one of the best shows.
I feel like that's just like if I don't catch it when it's coming out,
Yeah.
then I'm just really not gonna get on board afterwards.
Yeah, also, you don't have to like it. That would be like if I was like, you have to watch Twin Peaks, it's one of the best shows ever. It's like, I think that, but does the majority of people think Twin Peaks is a good show? No.
No, it's a cult classic.
Anyway, so Weird New Jersey published this letter to be like, interesting. What do you guys think? Is it true, or is it a local myth? And another reader responded and was like, it's definitely true. Her name was Jeannette DePalma, and she was found on an altar. ... unquote. So Weird New Jersey published this response. And then more readers replied with what they knew about the case and what they heard growing up, and you get the picture. This is how
All
it started.
very, very responsible of them.
Well, that's the story.
Yeah.
Like, that's the story everybody knew.
Yep.
They don't think they're perpetuating any sort of rumors, really. They're like, it was in the newspaper. We all heard about it in town. That's the story.
Yeah.
So as more details came in, a better picture actually was starting to be painted of Jeannette that didn't solely focus on the occult or her supposed human sacrifice death.
Mm-hmm.
For example, it was learned that Jeannette was known to hitchhike in the area. So the idea that a nefarious person could have picked her up and murdered her, and, you know, that was talked about alongside the occult theory, instead of the occult theory and being like predominant and that's it, 100%, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, which is so crazy, because it's like, for years at this point, 25 years, everyone's talked about how this poor girl was murdered at the hands of Satanists and blah blah blah, but to me, I hear she was murdered. I'm like, well, it's probably some freak opportunist that did it. And now they're like, well, yeah, she was known to hitchhike. Like, that makes sense to me.
Yep.
Her home is right near the interstate. It's right next to, well, it's like 2 blocks away from I-78. So it could have been an opportunist. The Hudai Quarry is right off I-78. It's a private, quiet area. Like, literally, if you were going eastbound, so towards like New York State, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
you right where Hudai Quarry is, you can get on and off the interstate. There's exits right there.
Oh, okay.
Like,
yeah.
To me, I'm like, that's what makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's a pretty good tell.
Weird New Jersey tried looking for articles and whatnot to corroborate the details provided by their readers and fans. But all they really had were old newspaper archives. And as we know, those can't really be trusted because the articles were so extra. And they talked about rumors and speculation. There wasn't any real facts. There wasn't any like articles that's like, we sat down with the police chief, blah, 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 and he clarified some important things. Like, that didn't exist. Naturally, Weird New Jersey correspondent Jesse P. Pollock began his own investigation and went to local police for better details.
This man's in a Dickens novel. Jesse P. Pollock.
Jesse P. Pollock.
Oh my god.
So he's like, that's weird. This isn't helpful. Your stories are great, fans. Love it. But let's get to the facts here. It's been 25 years at this point. The case is unsolved. It's cold as ice. There must be something new that they can provide. Like, Jesse's like, come on. We can do this.
The case is cold as ice. I don't believe in sacrifice, oh no. That's all I got. You get that. That's your job.
Go into the police.
Why'd you have to look around as you said it?
I was going with the beat. I was bobbing to an imaginary bass line.
Oh my god.
Bobbing to the bass line.
I love you very much. Jesus.
Christ. Fuck our lives.
Rose again after one day times thrice. We're fucking idiots with the microphone. You know that?
Holy shit. Okay, so Jesse P. Pollock from a Dickens novel or whatever you said.
Yep.
He's like, let's go to the police. Let's get some better details here. It's been 25 years. There's got to be something new they can provide. And no. No, he was met with resistance. They didn't give a shit about
Oh my
him.
god, they're still like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Years ago, of course, the police were saying, like, oh, the files are confidential. They're sealed. It's an ongoing investigation. Whatever. This time, Pollock was told all files and evidence relating to the DePalma case had been destroyed during flooding from Hurricane Floyd in 1999. So, it's a new excuse.
I don't know if I believe them. I mean, like, they haven't been a trustworthy character this whole time.
That's basically what Pollock was thinking. He was like, some stinks. So he's not deterred at all. Jeanette's case stayed with him. Eventually, he teamed up with author and editor Mark Moran to write the 2015 book, Death on Devil's Teeth, The Strange Murder That Shocked Suburban New Jersey, which chronicles their investigation, tips, letters, their interactions with police, theories, basically everything that Weird New Jersey magazine would have been publishing every so often. And doing this book instead, they were able to dive deeper and kind of get everything centralized in one book.
Mm-hmm.
The publication of the book got the attention of Jeanette's nephew, Ray, and together the trio worked on next steps for Jeanette's case. They were adamant the police had something. It was too suspicious that there was always one excuse or another. And I can't blame them. Like, it really gives the impression that they don't care. That the police doesn't care.
It's almost worse than that. Like, it almost makes me suspect them now. Like, like, did one of them fuck around and they cover it? Like,
Yeah.
Because, like, that, if we're gonna let fucking rumors as grand as a coven fly, then I'll keep mine a little more tethered to earth and say maybe they were protecting one of their own.
I mean, yeah, it definitely can start to look that way because you're like, wow, you literally were allowing these things to run rampant and scare the shit out of people.
Mm-hmm.
Because then, well, if it's so crazy and over here, no one's looking over here.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that to be like, that's my theory, guys. I'm pointing fingers now. I'm just saying, like, that's why you don't do shit like that. That's why you have to actually fucking communicate with the community you're trying to protect and try to be transparent when you can.
Yeah, and seize opportunities like the 25th anniversary, for example, to be like, we're releasing something new we never did, or let's do a little, I don't know, like a fucking 60 minutes about this is still unsolved. Like, they weren't working on anything.
Do a statewide campaign against hitchhiking, and then fucking tie this case into it. You know, find a way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I get what you're saying. My mind was just wandering, thinking of other things to do. Great, Dyson. In 2019,
Christ.
Pollock consulted with former Union County Prosecutor's Office, UCPO for short, Director of Communications Mark Spivey, to submit a detailed file request under the New Jersey Open Public Records Act and the Freedom of Information Act. After nearly 2 years of delays due to the pandemic and personnel changes, the UCPO finally released the bulk of Jeannette DePalma's case file to Pollock in February 2021. This case file included crime scene photos. That's very exciting, and that is also very interesting given the fact that police were adamant they were lost or destroyed in a flood or blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, whoa, what's this? Sorry, oopsie, it's the entire case file, pretty much.
And they were allowed to do it. That's so fucking greasy.
Mm-hmm.
Just unreal.
The photos of the crime scene were shocking. But they were shocking because they showed no occult activity at the crime scene.
Yeah, no kidding.
Jeanette's body was redacted from the images. Like, probably just for, like, compassion's sake. Because you're releasing literal photos of someone's dead loved one, and it would be nice if they did get widely circulated with a corpse.
Yeah.
Missing from the photos were any, quote, mutilated animal sacrifices that were long rumored to be scattered around the remains. The alleged crosses made from sticks and twigs and halo of stones that were supposedly found placed around Jeannette's body, they're absent from the crime scene photos. They don't exist in them.
Mm-hmm.
The closest object resembling a cross found near the remains were 2 rotten tree branches that had obviously just fallen in that spot like a long time ago.
Yeah. I mean, what's our baseline here? Sticks on the ground?
Yeah.
That equals a cross to you guys?
Apparently.
Yeah.
There wasn't any like arrows or symbols carved in trees and left around the scene. There wasn't an altar. There weren't 2 pieces of wood crossed on the ground over her head. Nothing. There was nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 pieces of wood crossed on the ground over her head was completely made up. There were pieces of wood around her, but they were kind of like, one was parallel to her body and her right arm is resting on it, and then there's a horizontal one lying like just behind her head, but it wasn't really like a piece of wood. It was more of just like a log.
Mm-hmm.
They were not framing her body like a makeshift coffin. And then yeah, you look around and you're like, okay, I can see some sticks here and some twigs, but like there's definitely just fallen debris from the trees in the area. Like it's makes sense now when you think about that article that was first published 10 days after her death, or sorry, after her body was found. And it's saying like, at first seemed to be just a part of the scene, now appear to be symbols.
Yeah, it's just so over the top.
Oh my God. As I mentioned earlier, police have suggested in the early days of the investigation that it's possible Jeannette died of an accidental overdose while partying at the supposed party spot, even though no evidence existed to back this up. No drugs or paraphernalia at the scene, you know. With the release of the crime scene photos, it's clear this probably wasn't even a party spot. There's not like a clearing that shows like this is where people would hang out. It doesn't look like everything's been like traipsed over and trampled down. There's no litter. The area's overgrown and like there's no litter. It's 1972. Do you know how littered everything was?
Yeah, they just like, you know, there's a scene in Mad Men where they have a picnic, and then after the picnic, like they literally just flick the blanket, and like I'm pretty sure Todd Draper just hucks a beer can.
Probably.
And they just drive off. That's just how it was.
Like literally I've had people tell me about how like in the 70s they would drive down the road and they could recognize fast food items like cups and burger boxes and stuff, and you would just see them all along the highway. Like everybody littered. And if you're talking about a party spot, those teenagers aren't hauling back all their beer cans and God knows what. It would have been trashed.
Yeah.
There was nothing.
Yeah.
The only thing littered in the area were the contents of Jeannette's purse. So approximately 8 feet south of her body, dumped out into a little pile, there was a pack of Markle tissues, a Vicks inhaler, a small compact, lipstick, a small eyeshadow box, a comb, a key on a ring, and a, quote, clear vial with an unknown substance. And that isn't like any sort of, that's nothing crazy. Jeannette's mother had told the press that her daughter, Jeannette, had a mild cold on the day she vanished. So it's possible that it was like cough syrup or something.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't anything crazy, not like a witch potion.
Some sort of tonic. Yeah, that makes sense.
A little tincture. Interestingly, the purse itself, along with her wallet and any money she would have had, was missing. Jeannette also always wore a necklace with a cross on it, and that was missing from her body. So these items were most likely taken by whoever killed her as like souvenirs or trophies. I forget the difference between the two. I think trophies
Or value. They took her money too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because gold cross, those crosses are usually expensive.
I don't know what kind of cross it was.
Yeah, but they're usually the necklace ones they're usually silver or gold.
Yeah, if you're desperate enough, you'll just try to pawn anything anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that, yeah. It could have been seen as taking something of value to turn a quick buck, or could have been taken as some sort of souvenir.
Mm-hmm.
In 2022, Pollock and Moran released an updated and revised copy of Death on Devil's Teeth to include these new crime scene details. The new publication also included a series of written statements made by convicted serial killer Richard Cottingham to Jesse P. Pollock, alluding to him having possibly abducted and killed Jeannette while she was hitchhiking. So, Richard Cottingham is an American serial killer nicknamed by the media as the Torso Killer and the Times Square Ripper. He was convicted in New York of 6 murders committed between 1972 and 1980, and convicted in New Jersey of 12 murders committed between 67 and 78. So he was an active serial killer in the area when Jeannette was murdered. Also, he's going between New Jersey and New York. Like, you probably take the interstates. She literally, most likely, was right near I-78. That is a
very
definite
possible.
connection.
Yeah. All I'm thinking as well is, like, I'm glad that we're stepping away from giving them names like that.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I always think of our episode of Spoils of Horror when Steven was saying that we can still do that, but they need to be, like, stupid. Like,
yeah.
What did he say? Like, tippy toes or something stupid?
The tippy toes
Like,
strangler or something.
like, stuff like that where it's just demeaning.
I agree. You know what? Like, we should be doing that, because you're giving them everything they want with the fucking torso
Killer and Times Square Ripper.
Like, and that's all to just instill fear in people, like extra fear.
It was
like,
quite a
stop
time. It was a time, man.
Yeah.
60s, 70s, and 80s was just wild.
It really was. So unhinged.
No holds barred. So Richard Cottingham claims to have started killing as a teenager, and also claimed to have killed as many as 100 people. He often sought female sex workers in their late teens to mid-20s, and is believed to have killed people in Florida, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Baltimore, Maryland. He would approach his victims in bars and drug them. He would then take them to a remote location and bind and gag them before killing them by strangulation or asphyxiation. In some cases, he would also torture and stab them before strangling them, which is why he was also nicknamed the Ripper, because of the mutilation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like his, overall general MO. Of course, he deviated when there was like opportunities or whatever.
Yeah.
When he was done killing, he would take jewelry or other personal items belonging to his victims as souvenirs. So that also can line up with Jeannette's case. The letters where he implied to Pollock that he might be responsible for Jeannette's death were forwarded by Pollock to the UCPO's, Union County Prosecutor's Office.
Okay.
After Cottingham agreed to speak with investigators if they wanted to meet with him. And I don't really have any news on where he stands in relation to Jeannette's case. At the rate that these police are investigating or not investigating, I really don't imagine they followed up heavily. And if they did, it was probably just like, kill another guy, 100 people, wow.
Yeah, we talked to him. He said he didn't do it.
I mean, he doesn't have any, he didn't. He said, just kidding. He was bored.
He said he had his fingers crossed the whole time he wrote it.
It doesn't count. The intense work Pollock and Moran were doing regarding Jeannette's case led to some really important clarifications and new details, which completely changed the tone. Like, it's so important that they managed to actually file the request to get those documents, that they actually got them, and they were able to widely publish through their magazine, through their websites, and through their book. Like, yo.
Yeah, that's
this
really
was some
good.
fuckery.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing. They did all of that.
Yep.
Now we can say with like 99% certainty that there was no occult elements in Jeannette's death.
Yeah, if there was, it would have been like such a weird fucking coincidence. It would have, it's just nothing related.
For real.
Yeah.
Everyone is still left wondering why the police acted the way they did. Like, why did they lie so heavily? Why were they refusing to comment and clarify? Like I have said, their actions suggest like they didn't even give a shit. You suggested it. It's like you can start to take different implications. Like, well, maybe you're hiding something on your own.
Yeah.
Like, you just start to go crazy because it's like, how were you so irresponsible with this? And
Yeah,
like, we don't have any answers.
The lying about the photos is just, I can't reconcile that. Like, I guess you could do that without repercussion. Shocked to me. But like, why did you do that?
Yeah, especially because like there could be a point somewhere down the road where someone, like in this case, gets an approval to have access, or somewhere down the road a new chief is in town and he wants to release them. Like, no matter what, somewhere down the road, there's no way it would have always been concealed.
Don't lie when evidence is involved, because you don't know what's gonna happen with it. It's like the old saying, always assume it was recorded.
Yeah.
Like, always assume whatever you're talking about was on tape. Like, because it's just stupid. You're gonna get caught in a lie.
It's so embarrassing.
Yeah, and on a huge scale too.
And then it's kind of like the way that I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, so did you, the police force, or the majority of the police, or the people who had a say for real, did you actually believe it? Did you believe it was Satanists? Because that's the only reason I'm accepting it at this point, that you behaved that way.
They'd have to be stupid as fuck
Like,
if they were reading about like there's an altar involved and carcasses and
Oh my God.
and then they look at the evidence and they're like, yeah, I believe that.
So then, yeah, now we know by the crime scene photos, there was not any activity that you could see. So like, that means they definitely, we'll say 99% sure, it means they didn't bring a witch to walk through the crime scene. So like, why weren't you easing her literal parents about that? Yeah. They're sitting up at night terrified, probably going to church terrified and praying that their daughter is not revived from the dead, and you're not even easing them at all.
My only thing that I can think of is if they were using it so ham-fistedly at this point to like not, like, they were happy that incorrect information was out there, because anyone coming forward with information would give them like non-cult related information.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this works for us. It saves us on sorting through all the nonsense because we can tell right away.
And then that even proved not to work, because they had to literally let the case just kind of go cold, because they're trying to get people to come forward with tips, trying to re-interview people, peers, the public. But now it's all entrenched so deeply in the occult that everything they were saying was pointless anyway, because it was bleeding into everything.
Yeah.
So like, no matter how you look at it, they fucked this. They fucked it. And it was so bad and disrespectful to her family and to the community, who was literally terrified. Even when Weird New Jersey began investigating on their own 25, 30 years later, they reported that people were still frightened by the details of the case as they knew them. They were still afraid to talk about it. They were still afraid to go on record. All of that. So it deeply affected the area. It deeply affected the way people communicated about the case. Maybe it is a very superstitious area, because there was also the other claims of animal sacrifices and stuff like that. So maybe because they're so superstitious, they were extra traumatized by everything. Like, regardless, it like seeped into the soil and like the fabric of this community. The worst part, though, is that sadly, despite everything Pollock, Moran have done with their book and releasing new details and stuff, the case is still unsolved. It wasn't enough to sort of spark anything new. It was enough, though, to sort of give clarification about a lot of things. But the organization called Justice for Jeannette DePalma is active. It's very dedicated to keeping Jeanette's memory alive, and they continue to look for clues and answers and all of that. So there is still people out there who are hoping to figure out exactly what happened to Jeannette one day. And that's really what is important. At the end of the day, Jeannette was like, she's a 16-year-old girl. Like, she says she was just going to go on the train to go and visit a friend's house. And then you think of her as just like a real human being, a 16-year-old girl. Like, I know you were not a 16-year-old girl, Tyson, but you were 16 at one point. And I think about how I was when I was 16, and like, it's such a complicated time to be a person.
Yeah.
And she's like the sweet girl who is just committed to her family, to her religion. She's going out for the night. She's a little sick. Like, her purse full of all her little personal items has like cough syrup and stuff in it. Like, she's still just trying to have a normal day. And this is what happened to her. And like, there's no justice. Her family deserves answers. She deserves justice for what happened to her. And like, she's just kind of lost in all of the fuckery that is the occult satanic panic type of shit, which is why I get so frustrated with cult and satanic panic stuff, because you're taking away from very real things and embellishing it with these made up fears,
Like,
which isn't
worse
real.
than fears. They're fantasies.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. Agreed.
Poor sweet girl. Rest in peace. And I hope that there is answers one day. Like, and it's possible. I mean, even think about the work that Pollock and Moran were doing. That's upwards of 30 years later. So it's still possible that down the road there will be answers as to what happened to her. So my personal opinion is that it was some sort of sick opportunist, that maybe maybe it is true she did hitchhike, or she was just in a wrong place at the wrong time and accepted a ride from some nefarious person. But I do believe it was just some absolute fucking psycho freak that did this to her. I don't think anything else makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's the most probable thing as well.
And I think it was someone local, because it's such a random place. The who died quarry on top of this one random cliff inside of it. At this point, it wasn't like really an active place. So like some local freak. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. It would have to be someone around there, someone who would know about the quarry, and enough that like she wouldn't be found for several days.
Weeks.
Yeah,
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Yeah. So I mean, and then I don't know. Like I'm not saying like the police did, but I think the police are suspect as shit in this entire thing.
It doesn't make any sense.
It makes zero sense. It sounds like they're protecting everything.
Yeah.
When they shouldn't be. Like,
the wrong everything.
Yeah, like they're safeguarding things that should not have been safeguarded. So I don't know. I think that is a big question that needs to be answered, is like why the police acted the way they did. And I feel like that's part of the story.
It has to be, because even 30 years later, they're not even a clarification.
Yeah.
Or a speculation from other cops or anything about why it got so misguided.
Like say it just screams like protecting someone. So I don't know. To me, that's where I would look first. Why did the police act the way they did? Because I mean, it wasn't a fucking cult. It wasn't Satanists or anything like that. And the only other information that we have is that the police are being very fucking weird about this.
Super weird.
So I would be starting to wonder about like the track record of the police officers at that time. And like, did some of them get shuffled around? And like wonder, like, do
like
we
a
have
priest?
Yeah, they get shuffled around like priests, man. Like, and then we find about them in the news because they shot some poor innocent kid.
Oh.
Like, and it's still happening. But I mean, and another thing, but to me,
while we're at it,
but to me, like that's what that was. That's what I would look into first. Is like literally the story is pointing me in this direction.
Yeah, I gotcha.
It's not me going like I have a prejudice against police, because like not really.
No, if anything, I would like them to
do better.
Give us some faith, man. We want to trust you.
Yeah, but I mean,
why
like
you gotta
this,
be so shady.
But the story is literally telling you to look at the police and figure out why they're acting this way. So I think following that is a very good indication as to like where this story is going.
And there you have it, the tragic death of Jeannette DePalma, and I really hope her loved one's getting answers one day. An interesting side note, when Jeannette's body was initially discovered, the Union County's prosecutor's office were prompted to review the List family murders that occurred in nearby Westfield, New Jersey, to see if her death could be connected to those murders. And apparently the List daughter had books of witchcraft, and the community was already really panicked over those murders. Turns out the cases were not related at all, but John List, who was the father and the murderer of his family, is one of the first killers that I remember hearing about on Forensic Files. And I was so disturbed and fascinated by the case, and being reminded of it again during this research makes me want to talk about it. So I think that will be the next Patreon bonus episode. It will be available on the Dark Love tier, which is only $5 a month Canadian, or $3.33 American each month. And it's linked in the show notes if you're interested in bonus episodes, which we have 3 of, and they're over 2 hours each, and there's a lot of extra content for you.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the dark side.
Bye.